If you're making a jar, you're going to get a piece of scratch computer paper. It's almost the size of the final paper. You can see it's like literally just a ½ inch off all the way around. When you fold it in half, you need to draw half of a jar so you can have it symmetrical, because we all know when we draw half of a jar, we can never make the other half match. So you're going to draw just half of it, and please make sure it goes all the way to the top. And you can kind of, you put the line in the middle, you can kind of estimate how wide your jar is going to be. It needs to fill up most of the space. If your jar doesn't go too far from the fold, let's just say my line only comes like, let's just say my jar was only like this, okay, then it looks like a root beer bottle. Then you could see my jar is only going to be half the size of the paper, the width of the paper, and there's not much of a landscape that can go in there. So please utilize the space. Once you get it the way that you want it, then just cut it out and trace. Notice also the bottom of my jar does not go straight across, it curves. And that's going to give it the three-dimensional look on the bottom. And when you open it up, you just trace it and then you go from there. I did not include the cork, so I'll probably bring it down lower and then I'll draw my cork on there, and that's fine. Corks can be off-centered or not symmetrical because that gives it a little character. So if you're doing the ornaments, it's the same idea. Fold a piece of computer paper in half. You can see it's scratch paper. I literally just fold it in half tall, and then you kind of measure out. I made a mark. I knew I wanted one of my ornaments to be this tall, and another ornament I wanted it to be longer. I wanted a variety. If you're doing ornaments, definitely variety of sizes. So I cut out this one, and now I don't have to draw them perfectly in a certain spot. I can play around with them. And then, of course, the circle you don't have to create. That's something that you can have on your own. You must do 3 to 4. So obviously I'm going to do 3. Some will be taller, some will be shorter, some will be wider. You have to play around with it. And this is a great way to see if your composition looks good and see how it will turn out. I like that one. Once you get it the way you want it, then you can trace it and go from there. So same with your snow globe. That might be a little big, honestly. You might want to go a size smaller. This is like 2 sizes smaller, so I need to find one. But actually that might not be too bad because you're going to create a nice large base and you just draw that on your own. So everything you start with has to use some kind of stencil, whether it is one created for you that's a circle or one that you create so that it has symmetry. Now it's time to add your landscape within your image or your shape. So whether it be a bottle, ornaments, or a snow globe. When you begin, you're going to start with mountains. However, you want to think about your mountains not being a perfect triangle. A lot of people tend to do mountains like really perfectly like that, and that is good for like a very stylistic mountain that's not really realistic. So instead, you want to make your mountain range go across like a heartbeat. Kind of goes up and then maybe it goes down a little bit, goes up more, maybe it goes down a lot more, and then like just irregular like this. You can also create layers. So like I like to stop and then give myself a horizon and then start on the other side and make lower range, and then it kind of overlaps behind. Do this in pencil though, because you want to get that mountain range just right. So see how I'm erasing? And maybe I'll do another range right here behind it. Mountain ranges do not have to be pointy either. If you look at some of the artists' work, Jen Arani, she also has some mountains that are kind of, they start off as a point and then they just kind of ripple down. So you can have a variety of different mountains. So I've drawn my mountains here. And now, after you outline them in Sharpie, you're going to create some shadows. And when you do this, it's going to make some of your mountains look more three-dimensional. So you're going to pick one side, either the right or the left. You're going to draw some shapes that go over towards from left to right. And then you're going to end it on the other side, lower on the mountain. Okay, so I did the same here. I kind of went out, it's kind of like a blob of paint. And I went out, and then I went out here, okay? Then you're going to create some diagonal lines to add your value. And this is a broken line, so I'm just kind of filling it with broken line that's not perfectly solid all the way from top to bottom. And that's just enough to give it something to look more textured. And look, that mountain already stands out. After you finish your mountains and they all have that texture, you can add some textures in other areas as well, because they're mountains, they're rocky. So you can do some broken lines going the other direction. This will really add to that. Try not to make your lines look like perfect, like spaced out like this, okay? That's not what we want. There's a difference between that and that. Texture and just drawing dashes. Lastly, you're going to finish the rest of your landscape, whether it's going to have an animal in it. I've got a little deer here that you can't see in the distance. Maybe you have a path, maybe you have a house. But you must include evergreens, and notice these evergreens are larger and these evergreens are smaller to show near and far. And then the ones in the middle are medium. So I'm not going to have an evergreen near the closest. I put a snowman instead. So this is a medium and these are all small. To make a evergreen, you start off with a vertical line. Then you take your Sharpie and you just kind of make your hand feel like it's having a spasm. I know this sounds weird, but you just kind of shake your hand. And now do you understand what I mean when I say have a spasm? It's just kind of like going to the right and going to the left. Boom, you have yourself a evergreen. I don't know another way to explain it. You start off at the top and you kind of just go side to side, but very little at the top. And then you just get bigger at the bottom. Okay, now for this bigger evergreen, the little Sharpie is not going to work. And that's when you switch out your Sharpies. Don't go out wider until you get about halfway. And actually, what I like to do is just make a thinner one. On the big ones, I just kind of make them thin all the way down. And then I go back on one side and I make very irregular short and long lines so that it's not perfect, and I just widen the bottom. Done. Do I need a stump for the tree? No, please do not add a tree stump. But you just want to know when to stop, because it's easy to get carried away with these guys, and it's easy to make the bottom go wider and wider and wider, and before you know it, you have a huge evergreen tree and you're like, what just happened? So start thin, you can always add on. You can never take away. So that's what we're going to be doing and to finish our drawing. And the last final thing is our galaxy sky, and that's the part where we get to add the paint, and we'll talk more about that later.